OB/GYNs of Reddit. What's the most mind-blowing thing a husband or boyfriend has said? A story from internship. Checked a woman who was not progressing in labor and thought, that's not a head. Sure enough, the baby was breech. She was a very tiny woman and this was a large baby, so it was pretty clear that she would need a C-section. She was a recent immigrant from a small third-world country, didn't have a partner with her, and spoke absolutely no English. Unfortunately, nobody on the unit spoke her language. I tried my best to mime and explain what was happening and what we were recommending. She nodded yes, but I had a strong sense she didn't understand the explanation. We sent somebody down to housekeeping and the cafeteria hoping we could find any hospital staff who could translate. Fortunately, we eventually found someone who was able to translate. It turns out that she understood that the baby was breech, but that she thought we would have to literally cut her open and kill her in order to save her baby. Her relief and joy when she finally understood what the plan was something I won't forget. The staff member from housekeeping was wonderful and stayed to support her until she went into the OR. Poor woman must have been scared to death. Props to the housekeeping person. Given what she thought was about to happen, she was incredibly brave. My mom was a general practitioner. She once had a 15-year-old girl come in who had a pregnancy test show positive but was adamant she couldn't be pregnant. My mom confirmed the pregnancy but the girl still refused to believe it was true. She went on to explain to my mom it was impossible for her to get pregnant because her boyfriend had told her that if she laid completely still during sex then she wasn't sexually active and couldn't get pregnant. I worked in a pharmacy and we noticed that a 16-year-old girl was coming in to pick up her birth control exactly 2 weeks early every month. This was immediately flagged as strange, because BC comes in a convenient package that makes it easy to keep track of the daily dose, and birth control is not really a drug that people hustle to try to get as many extra pills as they can, like Xanax, say. After a few months of this, the pharmacist confronted her and learned that every day, she took her pill, and her boyfriend did too. But doctor, I'm sexually passive. I'm a nurse and helped deliver this girl's first baby. I was still in school at the time. She was like 19, I think. The father, who was obviously much older, was also in the room. After baby was born, everyone was all excited and emotional, except for the father, who was just like and shrugged it off. My mother is an OB/GYN. She did a manual vaginal exam for a woman and the husband asked her, with an angry tone of voice, if there was any other way of doing the exam besides her using her fingers, because he didn't like her putting her fingers in his wife. Edit, of. She should have said that she was doing the exam digitally. ER nurse here, had a 19-year-old woman come in for abdominal pain. She had 2 kids and was pregnant again. She said she was not happy to be pregnant again but she didn't want to break up with her boyfriend. I thought the boyfriend may have been abusive or not letting her use birth control or something, so I closed the door and asked her some questions. Turned out she didn't know sex caused babies. Her sex ed consisted of get boyfriend/married and the babies arrive with no other details, so she thought once you had a boyfriend, babies were automatic, and sex was just a fun thing to do. We had a long talk. Crap, that is sad. Not an OB, but when I was in med school I was seeing a pregnant teen who was convinced she couldn't be pregnant. I asked if she was sexually active and she said yes. And I asked if she used any type of contraception and she said no. However, she said that her boyfriend told her he couldn't get her pregnant because he got kicked in the balls, a lot. Seeing mom back in the office for her 2-week follow-up after delivery to remove stitches, she had a tear that needed repair, only to find out the stitches were gone. Turns out hubby took them out because they were bothering him during sex. This is only the first comment I've read in this thread, and I think I'm already done. Bothered me so much I almost downvote. Bruh. This made me cringe and then remember that after I gave birth to my first son, my husband tried to force his way in there. Like 3 days after. Pretty sure, I kicked him. I can't even describe that physical feeling, or the emotional revulsion. It was the beginning of a very, very long ending. I hope that woman is okay. I sure hope that wasn't how you got your other 2 kids. I've definitely heard stories about nurses catching women giving the father, or whichever man accompanied her to the hospital, a BJ in the recovery room. Blows my mind. No pun intended, that's almost as bad as the co-worker whose husband openly had an affair during that time, although truthfully, she was as big a train wreck as he was, and I really feel sorry for their kids. Oh no. I did have one more with him. He was a soldier and at war in Iraq most of our marriage, and I dipped out after the third tour. And yes, some men are really like that in the recovery room. For that kiddo, he came home the day after the birth for 2 weeks. The next kiddo he was gone until my middle baby was 5 months old. I ended everything immediately after he came home. Not to be mean, but because he was no longer a safe person. I remind the boys when they ask that the person their dad was before war was entirely different. Neither of them have anything to do with him anymore by their own choice and experiences trying with him. What part of no sex for 6 weeks did have had not understand? Not an OB, but I work in an ER and we had a 22-year-old woman come in a while back. I asked her what she was here for and she said, I found a hole. Like an abscess? I found a hole. Okay. Is it a wound? Does it hurt? No, it's just a hole. It's a black hole. I 100% didn't understand what she was talking about and knew that I wouldn't get any more info from her at the check-in desk, so I gave her the bracelet and sent her to the triage nurse, who had the same conversation with her. She couldn't specify anything beyond, look, it's just a hole. It was her vagina. I was working with a girl who hadn't been married very long, and who hadn't had a period since the one right before her wedding. She told her older sister, and she told her she needed to find out if she was pregnant, so she went to the doc, and it was confirmed that she was. She pulls me in the back room, so no one else can hear, and she tells me, and I tell her congratulations. She says she has a question for me. She's peeing just fine now, but how will she pee when the baby gets bigger? Won't it block the urine? We worked in a library. I went right out to the stacks and got her a book on anatomy, and another on pregnancy. I found the pages on the genitourinary system, and we sat in the break room while I read the one for females with her and explained it like it was a storybook. I was so furious that no one had told her a damned thing. Do you have any more details on this, because this is the best story in the whole thread? I have so many questions, as if how did she not notice it until 22? What made her finally notice? How did she get to 22 without having even heard the vaguest mention of a vagina? Goodness gracious. Growing up, my mother was very strict/religious and girls were forbidden from looking or talking about down there. Could be a similar situation? Work in him, but a patient's partner not wanting us to reveal an HIV diagnosis to a patient was definitely a low point for me, though where I work it's probably a stretch to even call that surprising. Back in my ER days, a young teenage patient came in with pregnancy-type symptoms. Of course, pregnancy test was positive, and appeared utterly shocked she was pregnant. I asked her if she was sexually active. Yes. Do you use condoms? No. BC? No. Still, she seemed surprised this had happened. You can't get pregnant the first time. My boyfriend loves me and won't get me pregnant. It was just the tip / he pulled out. You can't get pregnant the first time. My good friend is a middle school teacher. Even in 2021, kids still believe this for reasons completely unknown to me. She's had to set a number of students straight on this over the years, and a couple of them were pregnant in 8th grade. Sigh, pregnancy is from sperm meeting egg. Neither cell knows if it's your first time having sex or your 1000th. Shaking my head. Ash had a friend who is just like that girl. No birth control pills, no condoms, nothing. Her methods were counting ovulation days. And her belief that Asian men are sterile. We are all Asian, by the way. She's backcrap crazy. We went to the same high school together, received the same sex ed. She graduated with a biology/medical related degree, so I expected that she'd know better than that. Nope, girl opted to do what she felt was right. Ah yes, Asia, that continent where no people have been born for generations. What? I lost any sympathy I had left for her when she said that. Bitch, your dad is Asian. I know a chick who uses ovulation as birth control. She's on her 7th kid at age 28, had her first kid at age 13. She's also been arrested multiple times with her loser boyfriend for meth-related charges, including having her kids' hair follicles test positive for meth. Definitely gave a story to the nurse who was taking care of my wife and me after our second. Having been going through labor all day, only being on liquids and not giving birth till almost 9 at night. We were relaxing, relative term, with the nurse while holding the baby when I turned to ask the nurse a question. She pauses. Turns away. Turns back to me and responds back with, "Not anytime soon." Disappointed, I try to push for more specifics. Because I had casually asked when can my wife have snacks, and that was a pretty nondescript answer for somebody who hadn't eaten in 12 hours. Turns out, she thought I was asking when can my wife have sex. After a good laugh, the correct answer was a couple of hours. I can't imagine what was going through her head before the clarification. Bless you for looking after her snacks. 9 months pregnant women here. You best believe I packed all the snacks for such an occasion. That's hilarious and so much better than the other answers here. Black children are pretty light-skinned when they are born. A maternity nurse told me that some fathers immediately suspect that the mom has been unfaithful when they see a child with a far lighter complexion. There was a movie called Babe's Kids, one that had a mother with 3 black kids of varying complexion. A person went up to the director and said, "Are you trying to imply all the kids have different fathers?" The director had to explain that black people come in different shades no matter what. A really dark-skinned black person, I've often made the joke the baby got to cook a little bit. Edit. I, for one, came out perfectly cooked, I just got slightly darker as I aged. On the flip side, my very mixed but light-skinned wife had to have the talk with me, her white husband, about how our child could, theoretically, be fairly dark, and to keep her genetics in mind. I had a roommate whose dad was half Indian, with white mom. They had 4 kids altogether. My roommate and one of her siblings were darker skinned than their dad, and the other 2 siblings looked white as snow. It was interesting hanging out with that roomie and her pale, blue-eyed sister, and seeing them repeatedly explain that yes, they are full biological sisters, not stepsisters or adopted or anything else. Edit. Spelling. My cousin has 2 kids with her husband. The first one is dark hair, darker skin, and short, all matching her. Her second child has blue eyes, curly light hair, and is tall. Doesn't look anything like her husband now, but when you see his family pictures, the second child looks just like his cousins and extended family. Super crazy. Genetics are so wild. Height differences like that are so interesting, probably only adds to the questions they must get. I have family friends in the same situation. They have 3 kids. One has dark skin like the mom, one has fair skin like the dad, and only the last one has a light brown skin tone like what people expect from mixed-race couples. Skin color aside, though, they all look exactly alike. Got the same nose/mouth/eye combo from their parents. You can tell immediately they're siblings. When one of my childhood best friends was born, his mom invited my mom over to see him when they got home from the hospital. For context, both his parents are very black, super dark. His mom busted up laughing at the look on my mom's face. She had no idea black babies could be born so pale. His mom said the melanin kicks in later. By the time I remember him, he was almost as dark as his parents. F COVID, I miss that dude. I would imagine this may be something that a lot of people aren't aware of if you don't have much experience with babies. I can see women not knowing this either. I heard a story about a guy who flipped out on his wife when the baby came out albino. Even dumber, his uncle was an albino, so he should have known better. Thought she was cheating. Last month, a dad asked one of our OBs for an extra stitch during his wife's repair after delivery. Her immediate response was, "Exactly how small do you need it to be, sir? Effing legend on our unit, now." Spread this so it can become the standard response to this all too common statement. My dad is an OB/GYN. I asked him. He said he was delivering a baby and the father seemed extra nervous, which is to be expected, but my dad sensed something was off. Well, anyway, he delivers it, and as soon as it comes out, the father yells, "It's mine, it is white." Then ran out of the room and told the family before my dad could say word. Needless to say, my dad did tell him that sometimes black children when born can look white. which lead to a big argument and security having to be called. Reminds me of the story where the baby came out a bit dark and the husband went on and in about his wife cheating and had his whole family basically abuse her only to find out that he was the one cheating and projected his guilt on her. What a butt. Not an obgyn, but my obgyn had the sex talk with me instead of my parents. They withdrew me from sex classes and made me show up to a counselor instead, promising they would teach sex on their own time. Anyway, the obgyn said that anal sex is legitimate but that you can't get pregnant from it. She had met at least 8 couples in her lifetime, age was late 40s early 50s, where the couple was having fertility issues and it was because the husband was using the wrong hole. I repeat, the husband was using the wrong hole. It was even more mortifying because these were very traditional couples, Asian, Indian, Christian, and they were horrified they were committing sodomy. So yeah. The conversations that woman must have had. I have to wonder how far down the list of questions and tests they get before they need to say, point on this photo what part you use and, on this portion, describe what you do with that part and where you do it. Not an OB/GYN but a nurse, and not anything a husband or boyfriend said but still an interesting story. I once took care of a patient who had a baby as a virgin. She was a very religious woman who was saving her virginity for marriage. She told me she never met the right man and she was ready to have a baby as she was getting older. She was in her early 40s. So she had IVF done and had a baby while also being a virgin. Back in my OB rotation in med school, we had a pregnant woman who was super morbidly obese with a BMI in the 70s. During her first prenatal visit, the resident was asking about her pregnancy history, past difficulty with fertility and conception, problems with the pregnancy so far, etc. Pretty standard stuff as far as I understood at the time. Husband then chimed in about the conception. Turns out, they had no trouble conceiving. He then went into detail about how the conception went and blew my little inexperienced mind. Basically, the wife's mother and sister had to help with conception by holding the wife's thighs out of the way enough that he could get in to do the job. I still don't have words. I used to be an L&D nurse. I've heard a similar story from a patient, except in their case it was friends from church. I have friends, but I don't have friends like that. I have friends, but I don't have friends like that. I thought my mo/bestie was a ride or die when she held my wedding dress up so I could pee. That's whole different level of friend. She probably would hold fat flaps though, she's pretty awesome. Laughing out loud. I missed 2 minutes ago when I didn't know this. Why? Why the F did I even click on this post? Thank you for watching. Please subscribe to be the first to know about Red Rabbit Reader's new videos. If you like our videos, please like them on YouTube and share them with your friends. We welcome your comments below. Press to start another of our videos.